We're in the greenhouse, but not for the reasons you think. So in all honesty, our garden's not exactly a hive of activity over winter. We're not yet at the point where we grow winter vegetables. And to be honest, it's usually pretty cold and pretty wet, and the ground gets quite swampy. So we don't do a lot other than tidying up and keeping on top of things. But having a greenhouse lets me do two things. Number one, I don't know why I'm doing this, I'm threatening you with this trowel. Put the trowel down, Eli. Number one, it lets me bring things like the hydrangea in and overwinter them in the greenhouse, because the hydrangeas here get absolutely killed by the frost. Well, not killed by the frost. The frost burns the hell out of the tips of them, and every year we end up losing all of the buds, and the hydrangeas are dropped to about 6 inches because it's all rotten and horrible, so we have to chop it all back. So this year, it's let me bring them in here, and although they're not looking gorgeous, they're still being affected by winter as normal. They're not burned by the frost, and they were still flowering a week ago, so that's awesome. The second thing it does is it gives me space for the messy jobs, because as you'll see around me, I've got lots of work to do on houseplants, namely two types of houseplants. We've got jade plants and we've got peace lilies, and I've been on a big adventure. So I'm doing a bit of work repotting these, getting some fresh soil in them, tidying them up, that kind of thing. And the greenhouse gives me awesome space to do that. But first I need some soil. So I've got all my raw stuff from the compost bin and I'm about to sieve it. It's really exciting. Now this stuff is raw straight from the bin, so it's still quite lumpy, it's not very fine. There's still a lot of bits and bobs that haven't quite composted down yet. So what I do is if I'm using it in pots, then I just sieve it and get as fine as I can. If I'm using this in the garden, I use it raw from the compost bin as mulch and things like that, or I put a layer of it in the bottom of the beds. You don't need the nice fine stuff you buy from B&Q for that type of job. But for this, for using it in pots, for like potted plants indoors and things, you want it quite fine. So I just sieve out as much of the kind of stuff that's not gone as possible. It's usually bits of paper, bits of bark, the odd eggshell, that kind of thing. And I don't throw this stuff away. Second bucket, that goes back in the compost bin. Another thing I should probably mention, sieving your compost. I've got a blog post all about this and a dodgy video, but we put this isn't the sieve I use for all of it. I should maybe make that clear. God, I'd be here forever and I'd be dead. We have a massive big sieve that Kate made me that's quite coarse. So we put it through that one first, and that takes most of the really big massive stuff out, which is why this probably doesn't look too bad actually. Then I use this if I'm wanting to get it down to the level for putting in pots. And this then takes it down to this fine pot and compost texture. So the first plants I'm doing are these peace lilies. Now, peace lilies, we've had these for years. These are probably about 30 years old maybe. And you can see they're looking a bit dodgy. This is my fault. I'm learning about all this stuff as I go. And like everyone else, when you're learning stuff, you make mistakes. So here's a good thing about peace lilies. They will droop completely. Like you'll think they're dead and you water them and they come back to life and they're great and that's awesome. And that's what you do. Basically, don't keep watering them. Let them kind of start to droop a bit and then give them a bit of water. That's how you know they need watered. But do you see the discoloration on these leaves? Okay, there's two things that happen to the leaves, and this tells you the plant's not happy, which is why I'm repotting it out of this soil. Number one, you get these black or brown curled up tips that die on the leaves, okay? This is really, really common, and you see this a lot. And what that is actually the chlorine in your tap water, okay? So if you can, clear out, boil your tap water and let all the chlorine and stuff evaporate off, and then let it cool and use that to water them. Or you get these black leaves. It's not the end of the world. You can cut the tips off. It's not the end of the world. But this is worse. You can see all of this loads of discoloration. This is my fault. This is because it was wilting a bit much and it was taking ages to come back, so I panicked and I went a bit mad and overfed it, and that's what this is. Peace lilies don't like too much fertiliser, too much food, so you need to be quite sparing, and when you overfeed them, this is what happens. It basically trashes all your lovely leaves. So I'm going to clean it up and take all the dodgy bits off, tidy it all, get it in some new soil and back in the pot so that it's not overfed. And that's all I'm doing just now. Then I'm going to talk to you about jade plants, so give me a minute. Now, here's the added bonus. Rather than just trying to tidy things up in the pots, because I've taken them out of the pots and tried to give it all a really good clean up, that's when you discover, actually, you've got loads of bonus new baby plants that have all been grown in there because they've been in those pots so long. And this one's even started to flower. So, free plants. Get them into some little pots. Way. Okay, here's the last houseplant. And I've left this to last because this one has a much bigger story. So much so that I have about 4 or 5 blog posts just covering this one adventure. So I'm going to link them as usual. And I would totally recommend you, if you want to grow jade plants, are growing jade plants or having problems with your jade plants, go and read this blog or set of blogs, because I've learned so much over the last year and a bit maybe. And basically, these are my jade plants. I now have, hang on, I think I've got about 9 of these now. I did have nearly 30 at one point, and this is why. I'll post pictures and stuff so you can see, because these aren't plants that I can move around and come in here just to show you on camera. So let me do inserts and things, so bear with me. Jade plants, they are succulents, so they store a lot of water in their leaves. They don't need a lot of water. However, I had one of these little guys from when it was tiny, before I got into gardening and knew nothing about plants, so I pretty much ignored it, and it did okay. Left it on a sunny windowsill, completely ignored it, watered it occasionally when I remembered, and it ended up enormous, and then I kind of fell in love with it. But then I moved it from where it was in the house, where it was getting ignored, in a sunny spot, and I put it beside me on my desk in my study, where I could see it all the time, because I loved this thing. It was huge. And it meant I could love it and water it lots. Every time it looked a bit dry, giving it a water. And basically, I almost killed this plant with kindness, because they don't like to be wet, they don't like a lot of water. So go and read the blog post, because it's a big long story and I'll tell you all about it. But essentially I learned this. Be sparing with your water, really, really sparing. Let them completely dry out before you water them. And check, press the leaves. If the leaves are firm, it doesn't need watered. If those leaves start to go floppy, that's when you water it. And don't overwater it, okay? The next thing I learned was they need a lot of sunlight. Not just light in the room, a lot of sunlight. And again, I discovered I wasn't giving this guy enough light because I had moved him. And I've got a filter on my study window because, as you know, with purple glasses, I have issues with light. So my poor little plant wasn't getting enough light. And basically all the leaves started to crystallise and fall off, and it was in a right sorry state. Luckily, I learned all this stuff and I went on a big adventure and I saved them, and I gave the big massive one a big prune to make it easier to manage. And that's how I ended up with so many plants, because these little guys, if it drops a leaf, it will root that leaf and it'll form a whole new plant. So when you prune these, they grow into new plants really easily. This little guy got knocked off the other day and it's already starting to form roots. So I'll have another plant soon. So, long story, go and check out the blog. What I'm doing now is I'm going to repot these guys up. This one, it's in a pot because I thought, I want them to be big again, but then I'm realising I don't have space for these big plants and I'm ending up having to give them away. So instead, I've got myself a nice pot here that I can put on my desk in my study, it's going to be higher, so it'll get up past the filter and get a bit more light for it. So it's a manageable size and it'll get light, so I'm going to repot this guy. And this one is now looking awesome, so he is destined for a friend. I'm giving this one to Heracles, who is my awesome teammate at work, and we swap plants because he's really into houseplants. So I'm going to give him this one. So I'm going to pour it up into a bigger pot ready to go. And basically that's it. So here's the thing. They are succulents, or you could almost say cactus. They're not cactus, but I'm saying that for a reason. The soil you want to put them in, you want to put them in a cactus mix of soil, okay? Like I say, they don't like to be wet. They do not like the roots to be wet, so you want it to be really, really good drainage in there. Now, you can buy cactus mixes, but they're dead expensive, so I make my own. So basically, 3 parts soil, okay? And this is just the stuff from my compost bin. Obviously, it's been sieved. And then I'll mix in 2 parts sand, coarse garden sand. Don't go and get stuff from your builder's yard, get proper stuff for gardening, because the stuff from the builder's yard can have lime and stuff like that in it. You don't want that. And then, this is my last thing. Okay, you can use perlite, which again is expensive, or grit. 1 part of that, so it's 3, 2, 1, 3 soil, 2 sand, 1 grit or perlite, and that's your cactus mix for potting in. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do you first, little guy. You want these to go in a pot that has drainage, okay? There's no point doing all this effort with the soil and then putting it in a pot like that doesn't have holes in it, okay? If you're going to use a pot like this, use the little spacers that I always talk about on the bottom and put a pot with holes in it on top of them so that the water can drain out of that freely. You do not want the roots to be sitting in there. Now you have to resist the urge. As gardeners, the first thing we want to do when we pot up a plant is to give it a really good watering. You need to resist that urge for these guys. Do not water it until those leaves go soft. Right, I'm going to do that one and that's me. So there we go. I'm going to go and get cleaned up and have some lunch now because I am starving. Luckily it's quite mild today, so I'm not freezing in here. But there we go, so all the peace lilies are all nicely planted up, tidied up, and I'll look after them, I won't overfeed them. And my little jade plants have been repotted on. This one will go in a nice pot and go to Heracles as a gift. And these 2 beauties, yep, 2. I split the one that was in the pot because it had 2 branches going off. I think I'm going to turn these guys into bonsai. That might be interesting fun. But yeah, so I'm going to take these indoors because I do not leave these out here. It's far too cold out here. And that is me for the day. So have fun, guys. It is winter. There's probably not going to be much going on in your gardens, but you can have lots of fab house plants. So you can still be having gardening fun. See ya! You still there? Yeah, the grit is not just to look pretty. It stops the cats digging in the plant pots. Having cats is a nightmare. Oh.